Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Caroline White-Robinson, Head of OD and L&D at Shoosmiths. I'm delighted to be chairing this evening's discussion, as it's a topic I think that many lawyers and leaders grapple with. I'm delighted to be joined by Timo. Timo's got a background in tangible asset commoditization, and in 2016, he became the founder of Cosmonauts and became then CEO of that business, specializing in legal tech. He's also CEO to PayParama. I'm also joined by Guy, and Guy studied computer science and started his working career as a software developer, running his own web-based development company for 10 years. In 2018, life changed when he entered the global legal hackathon and discovered LegalTech and access to justice. Guy's built a product called Legal Connection in the hope that it would make life much easier for all members of the legal profession to work together and better serve clients. The product found traction amongst community paralegals in South Africa. And soon after, the product was being used by pro bono lawyers, public interest litigators, and even commercial lawyers. The uptake then inspired him to move to London and test the product in the World Centre of Legal Tech. The response has been great, specifically among small firms and solo practitioners. So good evening, Guy and Timo.
Hey.
So we're here this evening to focus on the discussion around software, specifically whether or not law firms should buy it from a vendor or build their own in-house capability. Obviously, each of the presenters paths has its disadvantages and its advantages. And tonight we're going to go through those and hopefully give the audience a view into both worlds. Perhaps we'll even leave with some ideas solidified. But Timo, let me come to you first to kick off the discussion. What are your views on should law firms buy in new tech or build their own innovation in-house?
Caroline, my humble opinion is that perhaps the right approach is somewhere in between. I tend to avoid taking things and opinions to extreme. I think that historically, a lot of organizations would tend to employ expensive and lengthy processes of building tools, and that led to a lot of law firms, especially big law, having been stuck with fairly clumsy legacy tools that they still cannot separate from. The last 5 years, though, brought us to an entirely polar experience where everyone felt that off-the-shelf is the way forward. I feel that off-the-shelf has its benefits, quick deployment, early accessibility, perhaps swifter buying to implementation kind of process. However, it does come with certain limitations. As I've stated in our kind of pre-call, I feel that a lot of off-the-shelf products come with what I call visual noise. You've got a firm that is looking to solve a problem. To solve that problem, they're looking to innovate both on the process side as well as the technology adoption side. They go to a solution provider. They offer them a solution that, of course, covers that very problem, but also covers another 70 or 80 problems that particular law firm perhaps doesn't need to solve. So you've got something in place that it's fairly complex. It does satisfy some needs, not all needs, and it comes with many other functionalities that perhaps are not required.
Okay.
That makes the product not only more expensive but also harder to adopt. That's my opinion. Not quite sure what Guy thinks.
Guy, I'll hand over to you then.
Oh, over to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this exact question, build or buy. And in my opinion, if you're even asking yourself the question, you shouldn't be building. 99.9% of the time, you should not be building your own software. And I know this because even we in the software industry don't build something if it already exists. I think that there is a sort of a misconception that building something means that you'll have something that's sort of better quality, better than what's out there because you would have poured your own creativity into it and it'll be exactly the way you want it. The reality is that building something is always going to, especially if you don't have very, very strong resources, is going to lead to a substandard product. If I said to you, I'm thinking of getting a new television, I'm going to build my own TV, or build your, you'd think, well, where are you going to start with that? Well, I'll find transistors and I'll find the right glass and I'll do all kinds of things. It's obviously crazy to imagine you'll build your own TV. You go and buy a TV. And I think that people have a misconception that when it comes to software, software is easy to build. There's tutorials out there that can teach me how to do it. There's endless stories of people who've done it before. And, I think that can lead people to the incorrect assumption that building software is simple. Building software is, incredibly complicated. Building software that works very, very well, that doesn't break, that doesn't crash, that doesn't have bugs, takes many, many years. And so, yeah, my answer to build or buy is buy. Obviously, buy Legal Connection if it makes sense. But definitely, that's what I spend my life telling people to do.
Okay.
Just to jump in here, apologies, Caroline. I think that what's also quite key before you actually jump onto whether you should build or buy is to set your objectives quite clear. Are you building or buying something to solve a problem internally, or are you building or buying something to essentially offer to your customers as an extended offering to your core services? I've witnessed, for example, legal organizations, some of the major ones who have mastered quite well the whole notion of building good software and then offering that good software to their core customers, and essentially making their services far more sticky than if they're just offering them through an off-the-shelf solution or just offering them on their own. So if you set your objectives quite clear, then you'll be able to make a better decision as to where you need to start from. I think that it really depends on the case. A simple build or buy, it's not a yes or no answer.
Okay, so here's my dilemma then. So I sit on the opposite side of the fence in a law firm, and I love both your answers. I can see real merit in kind of everything that you've said. However, and I agree with setting the objectives up front. But if you've got people in a law firm who don't necessarily understand what tech they need, how do you go about how do you even start to know what your objectives are?
You go back.
Yeah, look, I think that that's a very good point. And again, you can be frustrated with the tools that you're using, and you can say the tools that I'm using aren't working the way I want to. They're not serving me. They're not serving my client. I know I need to build something that's going to work just right. And again, you go down this road of, what would my dream product look like? And, can I ideate and can I chat to my colleagues? And I know that we do the same thing in tech all the time. And so you need to find out what is the need that I have. I think that you then need to go out into the market and look for every single product that already exists. And this is what we do. Every single product that already exists that could solve this problem, and make a list of the 50 tools that could deal with that problem. And these will include the product that you're currently using, the one that you hate and that you want to replace. This will include the obvious competitors to the product, and then it'll include, what if we did something different? What if we used, an Airtable or a spreadsheet, or an Airtable linked to a Zapier, linked to this, and so again, it's not about sort of pushing them to one tool, but it's looking at every single thing that exists. I'm currently working on a module within our product which is going to send emails, and it's going to send emails in a certain way. Could I build that piece of functionality? Absolutely. I could task one of our developers with building it, and they could spend the next few months building it. But SendGrid and Twilio have already built a better email product, and it would take me years to match their email capabilities. So obviously we're going to buy SendGrid or Twilio. It costs $99 a month, and we'll be integrating it into our product. So I think that, as a first step, it's about looking what exists and not treating software as one big box, but treating it as a sort of a machine and seeing where can things slot together.
Okay. Timo, do you agree, disagree?
I'm with Guy on this one. I think that, there's a lot of beautiful software out there that is doing things just right. I think that obviously there are certain limitations as to how currently the legal innovation market is structured. I think that compared to other enterprise software sectors, we're a long way of being able to collaborate with one another, being able to properly collaborate with law firms. I think that there has been some progress in the last couple of years to legal tech providers, or like opening APIs, being willing to integrate with other providers, being able to offer the possibility of organizations to build on top of what already they've achieved. But historically, it has been a very limited segment of the market from a collaboration perspective.
Okay, so it sounds like there's something that the legal tech firms can be doing more to collaborate with law firms. I'm really interested in this idea that not this idea, but we know that there's tech out there, and you talked about the whole list of products, go to the products, etc. Law firms are trying to use tech to innovate. And I guess in the space of a leader's mind in law, they're thinking, by using this tech, we are going to innovate. But if you're just going to go to something that already exists, does that really push the boundaries of innovation, do you think?
Can I answer this question? As a non-lawyer and as a client of law firms, I deal with law firms all the time. I'm desperate for law firms to innovate, and I would like them to innovate. But where I would like them to innovate is on the model, is on the what they're offering to us, the price that they're offering to us, the people that they're giving to us. That's where I want to see the innovation. And if you look at, let's use Uber as a nice example. How did Uber start? Uber started with a simple service where you would send an SMS to a call center. That call center would then make sure a driver picked you up and dropped you where you need to be. There was no tech involved in that, just an SMS. They didn't have a mobile app, they didn't have a web app, they didn't have anything else. And Uber was a runaway success because they offered people a different business, a different price and a different service. And so I think that law firms, when they say we would like to be innovative, there's plenty of ways to be innovative, which don't involve writing a single line of code or building a product. And that's, maybe a part of the answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Timo?
I do resonate in the message. I mean, innovation is not just technology. Technology is just one aspect of what innovation is. I'm a firm believer that what's even more important is in innovation of processes and adoption of innovative processes and models. On its own, technology means very little, and it means even less if it's not used or if it's not used properly. I think that there's been a lot of hype around technology in the sector. There's been a lot of investors' money being poured into a lot of solutions out there. Well, what I feel there's been a lot of compromise is the way that those solutions are being implemented and actually embedded in organizations within law. And the fact is that I feel that we are coming to a place where we'll be actually looking back and trying to figure, what's been really the impact here. Can we quantify as to whether those technology solutions have made our organization better? I mean, Caroline, from your standpoint, I'm sure that within your organization, you've seen an uptake of looking at different pieces of technology, trying to figure what should we use, what should we buy, buying certain things, going through a process of adoption. But really, how do you quantify what the real impact is within the organization? Has the spend and the effort justified the results that you've achieved? Absolutely.
And if I can hold on to that thought, actually, what I'd like to do is bring that in a little bit further into the conversation, because I think it's a really valid point. And certainly there are huge challenges around the adoption of tech, and I work with behavioral change within a law firm, so getting them to change their mindset, their skill set, and use the tool set can be quite challenging. But let's come back to that, if we may. What I'd like to do for our audience this evening is really think about what are the factors that anybody should be thinking about when it comes to, should I build it myself or should I buy it in? Let's go for the build piece first. What would you need to have in your organization to build? And I know you both kind of were, well, Guy, you were kind of like buy, and Timo, you're like on the cusp. But for those people out there who are thinking, actually, we've got some IS capability, what should they be looking for to build it themselves? Guy?
Sure. I have decided I want to build a product. Number one, you should be looking for to create a user journey and to create some screens. You can do that yourself. You can go on a course, you can learn how to do it, or you can hire a UX company, buy 100 hours of their time and build out some screens for a prototype. I think that's step one. Then step two is maybe bring in a consultant, something like that, and look at these screens that you built and said, okay, this is the thing we want to build. Of course, all the stuff did it or exist, etc., etc. And then it's like, what technology stack can we build it on? Are we going to use a no-code solution? Are we going to build it on a framework, something like Drupal or Ruby on Rails? Are we going to go and build a full, a full stack solution? And then probably you need to scope out how much it will cost to build. And then I think that the thing that people always forget about is how much it will cost to maintain. So if you're going to be maintaining it, make sure that there's enough to you've put 2 or 3 years of dev time in place to maintain it. Those are some of the things off the top of my head.
Okay, Timo, would you add anything to that?
I mean, you have to ensure that you've got a clear idea as to what you're building from the very outset, and also you have to ensure that you've got the internal resources in terms of time of your core team or whoever will be involved in working through that process. So you have to be prepared that those individuals, those key individuals who have to spend a tremendous amount of time working with that development team, getting the product to a usable stage, and that will inevitably take them away from whatever their key activities are. So again, that kind of drags me back to what I've said initially. Are you building something to use internally? Because if you are, probably there is something out there that you can already use, but perhaps not fully, but still. Or are you kind of building an extra asset under your business to kind of create additional revenue stream or make your service more sticky?
Okay.
That's where I am.
Okay. So just before we started this evening, we were talking about age and whatever, and I was saying, as somebody who has, I've got 4 children, and one's at the near end of 30 and one's 8. So I've got children all across the spectrum, and the adoption of technology for them coming through the ranks of school and university, etc., it has been a very different journey for each of them. So I put that out there with the basis of who are the best people to engage with in the law firms, because they're very traditional models. You've talked about the model could do with a bit of a shake-up perhaps, but they're very traditional, and guaranteed the people potentially who are at the top, who hold the purse strings, who taking the equity out, won't necessarily have come through this tech journey. So, but they're the decision makers. But should we be looking at trainees coming in, the junior, paralegals or lawyers, getting them involved? Is that the right audience?
Are you asking if we should bring them in the design process, or?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I mean, I never thought of it. I'm often, my world is less around the big law firms and more around the legal tech startups. When people usually approach me, or when I approach them, it's when they're about to build the Airbnb of law or the Uber of law, or the next Seed Legals or something like that, and they're trying to take their first steps. So usually they come with a sort of a fully formed idea, and then it's usually around disruption. How can we steal a bit of business from the big law firms? So I think Timo might be better equipped to answer.
Caroline, I think it depends. It depends who your users are. If you're kind of more junior staff, paralegal level colleagues are the core users of that product, then by all means you've got to bring them into the process. Even though some of the more senior colleagues may have gone through that journey years back, the current processes probably have changed quite a bit since their time. So I think that you should always look to bring the users from an early stage. And if the users or the partial users will be your customers, again, by all means, try to drag them into the process. Don't try to feel that you understand fully the process. Just being one segment of it, like that would mean that you're probably wrong, and that means that probably you will get certain things wrong when building that product.
My question was really sparked from a conversation that we had earlier on in the week, Timo, and it was a phrase that you used, and I loved it. It just stayed with me, which was, some of us speak the language and some of us don't even understand the language.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm definitely in the latter camp, I have to say. So, that's where I kind of think to myself, the breadth of experience is often useful in designing what it is they need. And I love that bit that, Guy, you said, what is it the need of the product? Just even if you can articulate what that looks like, then you've got a starting point. And I think that's where sometimes I've seen legal tech go wrong, because you ask lawyers who don't have the language to use, and you have IS people who are speaking a different language, and it just doesn't connect. And even when the product is then delivered, it's clunky, it's difficult to implement, because people are like, this is not what I thought I was getting. But the IS guys will say, but that's what you asked for.
Yes, but Caroline, I mean, you should also understand that law firms are going to be taken for a ride by technologists, and I've seen a couple examples of this by ex-lawyers who are starting their own legal tech startup, and either have engaged a software developer, paid them a whole lot of money, and nothing was built, or are about to pay them a whole lot of money. And are being told to build something which already exists, and the fact that the law firms then don't understand the language and don't understand, it works to their disadvantage. And there's a lot of people out there in every industry who will take your money if you say they'll be very nice about it and kind about it. They'll say, wow, that's such a great idea, I can see this working. We can build you the minimum viable product. It'll cost this much, and they want to get you in there. And so what I would say is maybe a middle ground is, rather than the law firm deciding I'm going to build this from scratch myself or I'm going to go buy it, is to say, look, I'm going to engage a legal tech startup that already exists, that's built a part of it. And I know that a lot of law firms do this, and they even approach people like ourselves and they say, look, we've got this idea for something we want to build. How would you like to come and sit in our law firm for the next 6 months and build your product into what we need? And I think that if you do something like that, then you really are starting to align incentives. You're saying, look, we're going to give you 6 months of our time as the law firm to design your product. You're going to give us 6 months of your time as the sort of founder of the product, and together we'll build something amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm really keen, now that you've said, there are going to be people out there who maybe want to take your money off you, not build anything for you. Because the other side of the question was, well, what should people be looking for when it comes to buying from a vendor? So, you've already mentioned that there will be potentially unscrupulous people out there. So what are the key things that, our audience should go away with tonight thinking, right, I got to check for this, this, and this? Timo?
Before I answer that one, Caroline, can I just quickly say something in relation to your previous question? I've happened to been running legal innovation conferences for just under 5 years now, and every other technologist has been sort of like preaching the wrongful message as to how lawyers are not tech savvy, how lawyers are not open to innovation, how they struggle to innovation adoption. I think that it's completely wrong to think that lawyers should be tech savvy. I think that it's completely wrong to expect that people should be aware how innovation is functioning at the back end for them to use a piece of innovation. A very simple example of that is that we all drive vehicles. Not all of us understand the process of how a vehicle is built and operates. People shouldn't have to know how technology operates. They should just be able to use it. And it's the job of the technologists out there to make it usable enough for people not to question how things are done. Back to your other question. Could you just repeat the last part, please?
We were going to talk about the buying of why buy it in, and Guy obviously mentioned about the unscrupulous people that exist in every industry. And I think to link what you've just said actually to this question, I think you're right. Partners don't necessarily need to know the behind the scenes. However, particularly where the partner's earning profits, when it's their own money, that sees a difference in how much they're taking home, I think a lot of them will want to know what that looks like. So that, because you mentioned the maintenance costs going forward, et cetera, and it's a big investment, and particularly where they don't understand it. I think that's a big challenge for them. So, you know, we can talk about how you get a company across the line to bring in tech, but for me, one of the barriers to buying is I don't understand what this huge amount of money, or it feels like a huge amount of money, is going to get me.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's good to try to understand how you can quantify the benefits of buying a piece of innovation. And again, there are core benefits and there are peripheral benefits. Of course, the core benefits is improving a process that you've got internally, so making you quicker, making you more efficient, making you better at delivering the services to your customers. As we've discussed before, the way that I see the legal world is that there is always one single beneficiary, and that's the end customer. In the B2C world, you know, those are like regular people out there benefiting from the legal services that are delivered better. In the corporate world, those are kind of the corporates and the companies that essentially, you know, benefit from those better delivered legal services. So, you know, those are your core benefits. There are a lot of peripheral benefits when it comes to innovation. You know, if you are perceived as a highly innovative firm, there is a PR and marketing benefit. You know, you're kind of coined as someone that is at the forefront of innovation when it comes to legal services. You get a lot of exposure. You know, you've got that business development and marketing benefit. And I think that there have been certain examples out there where people have leveraged that quite well. So you do sell yourself better. You show yourself to be a modern firm, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, it is an investment, but if you carefully examine the cross benefits of something like this, if done correctly, if you of course adopt it properly and actually use the technology that you buy, I think that the benefits outplay the cost. And again, it really depends as to who you're speaking with the firm. Yeah, of course, if you're a senior partner that perhaps is retiring in a year or two, you know, you may not see the long-term benefit. But if you're someone who is sort of a core group of partners, I think that now we've come to a point where we don't even need to go too much into the discussion as to is there a benefit. There clearly is a benefit. And another thing is that you probably lag behind if you wait further down the line to start adopting innovation. You'll just be outplayed by everyone else that is doing it already.
Okay.
Can I ask? I mean, this is actually a question, Caroline, because you mentioned that tech is so expensive and it's such a big investment, but that's, you know, never really my experience of looking at tech. And, you know, especially when compared to building, it's probably going to be 1,000 times more expensive to build something than to buy the same thing off the shelf. I wonder whether if you're confronted with it costing so much, there isn't, you know, maybe the possibility that you need to look a little bit more to find, is there another product that could do something the same thing? Is there another product that could do something similar, which could cost me much less? You know, are there non-legal tech products that I could apply versus the legal tech products? Yeah, are those considerations which come into play?
I think so. I think again, the model of a law firm, most people like to keep their gearing fairly high in terms of partners to support staff. You know,
Yeah.
the partners bring in the money, but therefore in the support staff, if you're not going to invest in IS, and we've seen in the comments tonight about legal ops, I mean, I think that's an area that is developing into law firms.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a legal ops team as well, who then goes out and finds these products? And you might have a very simplistic IS infrastructure that you have one or 10 people looking after. Never going to be one, is it? But, you know, 10 people looking after, but they don't have the expertise in this either. So it's then how do you take partners away from the day job to invest in this, and senior people who are bringing the revenue in to look at this. And I've been on a couple of document management integrations where actually it was built in conjunction with all of the legal advisors. And one of the biggest barriers to that was, I'm not getting any kudos for being on this project. It's taking me away from fee earning. And they didn't want to be there. And then, of course, when you've got people who the mindset is a begrudging one,
Yeah.
They're not going to give their best. They're not going to fully understand or test or poke or ask questions. So you lose that innovation that you are desperately requiring from the coalface, if that makes sense. And then the frustration we had with, and we did a joint kind of obviously this is Chatham House rules, but you know, when you're working with a consultancy coming in, then they're frustrated because they're desperate to get the feedback in to do the next iteration, and it just slows. It becomes very slow, and then of course you're looking at the cost of implementation, and something that should have taken 6 months seems to have dragged on this long, and that's when unforeseen costs, etc., just escalate. So I think there's some nervousness about who do you pull into these projects in order to develop them, launch them, embed them, and then do that big piece at the other end, which is, hang on a minute, what's the return on investment on this? And to Timo's point, what's the long-term investment of all of this? Because I think, I come from a world of ex-pharmaceuticals before I joined law, but there's stuff you just have to do. It's like all of us, you just have to pay your mortgage. It's not a choice. If you want your house, you just got to pay that. So it's easier to make some of those decisions than it is to then invest in something that potentially is quite scary.
But is there some sort of, because, again, I'm looking at startups, and startups are there to disrupt. And as they're disrupting, they need various bits of tech, and they build them if they're not there.
Yeah.
Can you not say within the law firm, look, this part of the law firm is going to be building a new service, which is offering. And this particular service offering, we're going to try and do the same thing that we've always done, but at a fifth of the price. And pass that cost on and then by doing that, win a segment of clients, and then sort of build around that little sub team and say, look, because this team is invested, it's their little baby pet project. They're going to build the tech, and they're going to spec the tech, and they're going to test it in the field. I mean, and they're going to sort of almost act as a startup that's within the law firm. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see why it wouldn't work. It's just who's out there pushing that.
I mean, Carla, there are quite a few firms out there that have now built innovation teams, and those innovation teams are sometimes led neither by technologists nor by lawyers. And of course, by all means, I completely understand where you're coming from. It's a huge responsibility that is given to someone, because there is a big chunk of investment that comes with the process. But at the same time, there has to be kind of an adequate reward that comes with fulfilling those projects, and an adequate recognition that comes with fulfilling those projects. I mean, there's some great examples of law firms out there that also build their own innovation labs, and what better way to see what's out there than actually bringing it in-house and trying it yourself. So, and those are firms like Mishcon. Those are firms like Siemens and Siemens. We all know that those guys are seasoned players when it comes to identifying technology, bringing it in-house, trying it out. If it's good, they keep it. If it's not, they let it go. I think that a lot of other organizations don't have a proper process in evaluating technology. I think that a lot of other organizations go out there, whether they go to conferences, whether they're approached by technologists, they see something, they like it, they buy it. They don't go and search for what is best for them. They end up buying what's being offered to them. So there is a need for a proper discovery process. Some firms do it well, most don't, and that's why also a lot of firms adopt technology that's not quite right for them. And
I guess that's why they end up with what you said at the very beginning, which is 20% that meets their needs, and then 70 or 80% that doesn't really do anything for them.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm dealing with these two. One lady who's just left a big law firm, and she's starting her own startup. And the idea, without giving too much away, is that she's going to give startups something like 10 different contracts, and she's going to give them at a price which is ridiculously cheap. 10 different contracts that every startup needs. And so she is putting together the tech that and once she does that, the hope is then she can steal a sliver of business away from the likes of Shoosmiths and sort of disrupt very small segments of the market. like so many other startups. And so then, her challenge is, okay, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to be able to service this market at this price point, I'm going to need this tech to work. And then her entire job is around, building and designing and testing and rolling out this tech around that specific use case. And the use case is getting this done for this exact price. So I think until you have that use case in the law firm, you're essentially asking lawyers who billing, £1,000 an hour to go and test out tech, which is going to make themselves, which is going to make them, more efficient. And so the incentive is not there. Whereas I think, again, going back to the previous point, if you said to that same lawyer, I challenge you and your team to deliver X service, but to do it in X price and to get it done by using technology, you've all of a sudden got an incentive for them to drop what they're doing and work on that project. But if they're, and I guess you've got to just pay them enough so that it equals what they're getting in their billable hours, and treat it as an investment into the fact that it's one thing that you can do to not be disrupted in a few years' time. That's my opinion.
And one last point from my side. I think that identifying the right individuals to champion this process is very important, and they don't always necessarily have to be from the senior management. Study your team, try to see who is passionate about change, who is passionate about technology. You can find someone that have joined your firm fairly recently, and I've seen that on plenty of instances. Again, a good firm to kind of point towards is Adolphe Goddard. 90% of their innovation team are very young, eager professionals who have just joined their kind of legal career journey few years back. Those are the guys that are championing the process within the Adolphe, and they're doing it very, very well. So find the right people. If you don't have them, look elsewhere, look out there. There are plenty of great companies that can offer you support. Don't shy away from investing in that initial process, not just money, but also time. That process is almost just as important, if not even more important, than actually getting the technology, implementing it, and using it.
So I think it sounds like if we're going to buy in, it's a much bigger conversation than just cost, isn't it? And
I think cost is just one very small segment, and I think that sizable investment actually is the smallest part of the whole. Actually, the amount of time that you waste not getting the process right and not getting where you want to be, and being at stage 1 3 years after you began the process, it's far more costly than investing X amount of pounds in a piece of technology.
Where does the actual cost? I guess where's the biggest cost? Is it in the build? Is it in the maintaining? Is it implementation? Where generally do businesses have to spend their money, as it were?
I think, building is the most costly. The more you can reuse and the more you can buy, the better. Then, as you asked before, so who do you buy it from, and should I just go with the cheapest provider? Which is not a bad thing necessarily, to go with the cheapest provider. But I would say that it's important to look at the company that you're going to be working with. Say, do I want to work with these people? Do I want to see this face, Guy Stern, all the time in my office every few months? Is this a team I'd like to be working with? And then sort of look at the how developed the product is that you're buying and how developed the solution already is. And don't go for a very mature developed solution, because when you do, it's going to be much, much more expensive to build onto it. So, it's kind of counterintuitive. You think, well, if I go for a very big established player, then, it'll be very easy to get them to modify the product to suit our needs. But the reality is that the more mature a product is, usually the more moving parts there are, and creating just even the very smallest feature becomes a huge a huge project, because that little feature touches 1,000 other things in the product and all sorts of testing and compliance that needs to take place. On the other hand, you don't want to deal with a one-person startup who was born yesterday, because they may go out of business, they may get bored and move on. So I think that you need to really, like anything in life, you need to make sure that the people that you're getting into a relationship with are going to be people that you want to work with, that they've got the same interests, and that they're going to be easy to work with, and that and then also ask them about the costs. And I know that what we do when we engage with clients is say, look, this is the product, this is what it can do now. Then the next question is, well, could it do this, 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 and this? Yes, of course. How long will it take? And then we give them a ballpark figure. We say roughly this much, and then an hourly rate of this much. And there you've already got a sense of what's it going to cost.
Yeah. You made me really think about a saying that I've heard previously in law, not necessarily in Shoosmiths, but just in the legal industry. And it's why do people use almost like the big four accountancy firms? Because when you choose one of them, nobody ever gets a rollicking if it all goes horribly wrong because you use PwC. And I can see that in tech as well. I can see people who don't understand the language, etc., saying, but I've gone for this firm and they've been around for this long and they're this big, so that credibility seems to be much more tangible than this is a startup.
Well, I'd get very upset with one of my colleagues if they went to a big firm and started a big job where I knew that every hour that I'm paying this big firm is going to be this much, because I just can't afford a big firm. And so even if my colleague said to me, well, let's just buy 1 hour from that big firm, well, as soon as you've instructed that firm, you're going to need more and more. And I think the same is going to has to apply in tech. If you just know what you're buying and understand that if you're paying a premium, you're going to be paying premium for a long time.
Yeah.
Timo, a little bit on that. I think that, again, touching on what Guy has said, I think it's really important to see whether the people that you've got in front of you understand what you're trying to achieve, whether they understand your process, whether they understand your world. I think the size of the firm, it's often irrelevant. I think that if you've got a professional in front of you that will help you identify and work alongside you with what can be, put into a piece of technology and what can be improved, purely from an operational standpoint, this is the type of group individual that you should be working with. I think that we tend to, when it comes to products, over-engineer a lot of our processes. I think that the right way is somewhere, in between improving your processes from a practical standpoint and then, of course, adopting technology to a certain point. I think that, one or the other is never the answer. So, work with people that understand the objective at hand and try to solve it overall, not just from a technical perspective.
Fab. Guy, well, I'm going to actually go out to the audience right now because we are coming. I'm just conscious of time, etc. So, the panel would be delighted to have any questions from anybody in the audience. So, please, I implore you to use the Q&A. And whilst that is filling up with all your gorgeous questions, I'm sure there'll be loads. I just want to come back, Guy, to you on one final area to think about. You mentioned early on in the conversation about parachuting into a firm and working with them and being there, seeing your face every day or whatever for 6 months. Is that what you call your incubator experience?
Yes. Well, I mean, I've been through a couple accelerator programs, but never a legal accelerator. And, I'm literally in this phase right now. We are chatting to a law firm that has 500 lawyers, and it's way out of our usual league. And they are comparing our product to the tool that they use at the moment. And they're, looking at it and going, oh, wow, can it do this? And can it do this? And can it do this? And what I'm saying to them is, look, we can't do some of the things that you want right now, but you can see that the product's pretty cool. How would you like to incubate us? And this particular law firm doesn't have an incubator or an accelerator. So I'm sort of telling them, look, how would you like to create an incubator? We'll be your first part of your cohort. And then you throw us into that incubator, you give us a little bit of money, and we build this product, or we customize our product to do some of the things that you need to do. Yeah, and for me, look, it's been very important that I don't want to sell out and go into a law firm and land up designing my product in such a way that it'll only ever work for that one law firm. I want to sort of keep the integrity of the product that I built. I built a product specifically around the needs of clients more than lawyers, and looking at, if Legal Connection, it's a sort of a WhatsApp of law. It allows for this transparent billing and, lawyers and clients to work in chat rooms together. And so I'm looking at it and saying, is this law firm going to allow me to continue to build my product? Give me the money that I need to add additional resources to the product. And then, at the same time, can I allow them to sort of come out as, highly innovative? Can I obviously save them money, accelerate their business, and so on? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I haven't had an experience in an actual law firm legal accelerator. And if anyone's listening who wants to accelerate / incubate us, we're keen. But that's the thinking that is going through my mind at the moment.
Well, if you're saying 500 lawyers is kind of that big, then Shoosmiths is maybe not the one, because I think we're up to 900 at the minute. So, but it would be certainly very nice to work with both of you again. We don't seem to have any questions that have come in, and from a chairing perspective, that must be because we've covered all angles of the debate. I don't know how you guys feel. Is there anything that I've missed or that you really want to draw attention to before we end tonight's session?
I'm all right. I've got a few private messages that came in, one from Slack and one from LinkedIn. So thanks to those couple people, and thanks to the South Africans that I see. Why are there so many South Africans, Timo? Did you spread it? Did you publicize it quite widely on some channels?
I don't know, guy. Like, we seems to be like fairly popular among the South African technologists overall.
Well, any South Africans that want to reach out to me, please add me on LinkedIn, Guy Stern. Happy to talk legal tech. And yeah, also anyone else out there who wants to chat about legal tech, see a demo, bounce ideas. I'm like everyone on this thing, I'm a legal tech junkie. Yeah, and thanks, if I don't get another chance to talk, thanks to Timo, thanks to Caroline for putting this together.
Okay. Well, Timo, anything else that you think that we've potentially missed before I do a roundup and close today's conversation?
I think that as I started the conversation with the thought, figure what your core objectives are, work in accordance to them. I think that simple buy or build question it's hard to answer unless you understand what you're looking to achieve, and that will later allow you to quantify what you've actually achieved and what you got for your investment.
Okay, well, you've almost stolen my roundup from the discussion. Those are certainly the things that I took away. I think there's something there about clarity of the objectives, the people you get on board with this, and not just the IS tech, but also, the people in the business who are going to be using it, and perhaps, dare I say it, at that younger end of the scale. I know that from a graduate perspective, bringing graduates into law now, we see many more coming in with a law degree, but with some element of tech associated. So yeah, get the people right, and I suppose get the attitude right of the people as well who are going to be doing it. Mindset and attitude equals behavior, doesn't it? So get that right. And the final bit, and maybe this is another conversation that we can have at another time, but I saw in the comments legal ops come up a few times, and maybe we can talk about legal ops. I'm saying you might not get invited back, but your next chairperson can talk about legal ops and how that could be that interface, talking the language and understanding what both the business needs and what the tech firms need as well. But thank you so much for your time, Guy and Timo. To everybody who's out there, I can't believe we've had such a global reach. Brazil and South Africa. Timo, I don't even know where you're from. Where's your accent from?
I'm originally from Bulgaria, but I'm based in London.
So there we go. So we've got a Bulgarian, we've got somebody from Ireland, and we've got somebody from South Africa. And a truly diverse panel this evening. So thank you ever so much, and hopefully you'll join us on the next discussion.
Thank you, Caroline. One last thing. Our next discussion will be in about 5 weeks' time for LawTech London. We'll publish the exact time and topic straight after this webinar. So if you would like to participate as a speaker, please put forward your request, and we'll be happy to consider you. Thank you all.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.